If your surname is on this list, it isn't really a family name, it's a tribe. You are not just German by heritage, you're carrying a word older than Germany itself. Rome wrote these peoples down while they were still enemies, and 1,000 years later, one of your ancestors picked that word up and made it his own. Here's what nobody tells you. It doesn't prove your blood, it proves somebody's choice. In a Prussian schoolroom in 1875, a boy is corrected for the language he speaks at home. Stay until number 1. That name belongs to a people the German state spent 400 years trying to erase, and they carried it to Texas rather than give it up. Somebody had to decide to keep saying it. Number 10. Hess, Hesse. The name says you came from Hessen, and Hessen carries the name of the Chatti, a tribe Rome tried to conquer and finally settled for fencing out. They were in the coalition that destroyed 3 legions in the Teutoburg forest in the year 9. Germanicus burned their country in revenge 6 years later. Rome's eventual answer was the limes, ditch, palisade, and watchtower drawn along the southern edge of their land, an admission in timber and stone that these people were never going to be Romans. 17 centuries later, the name crossed the Atlantic in the worst way possible. In 1776, the Landgrave of Hesse Castle rented his soldiers to Britain, and roughly 30,000 German auxiliaries went, more than half of them his. Nobody asked the men. They were farmers' sons whose prince had sold their service by treaty, and they landed in a country that wrote their name into the Declaration of Independence as a grievance. Then the war ended, and 5,000 to 6,000 of them didn't go home. They walked into Pennsylvania towns where the shopkeepers already spoke German, and for the first time the name meant nothing worse than neighbor. Some tribes were sold by their own princes. One tribe did the buying. Number 9. Frank, Franke. Everyone assumes it means free, and it does now, but the freedom came after the conquest, not before it. The Franks appear in Roman records in the 3rd century as raiders on the Rhine, and the older root may be a weapon, a throwing spear. It's disputed. What isn't disputed is what they did with the name. They gave it to a language, a coin, and a country. France is just the place the Franks stopped. By the year 800, a Frankish king is emperor of the West, and Charlemagne spends 32 years grinding down the peoples who wouldn't join him. That's the part worth sitting with. If this is your name, you're descended from the winning side of a war that nearly ended the next name on this list. Somebody's ancestor did that to somebody else's ancestor, and both of them are watching this. The crossing came later and quieter. 13 Mennonite families, under Francis Daniel Pastorius, founded Germantown outside Philadelphia in 1683, and in the waves that followed, as many as half the arrivals came as redemptioners, 4 to 7 years of their own labor signed away before the ship left the dock. They landed owing time. They kept the name. What the Franks did on the far side of the Weser is the reason the next name survives in the shape it does. Number 8. Sachse, Sax, Saxon. The word probably comes from a blade, a short single-edged knife, which tells you exactly how these people got named, and who did the naming. In 772, Charlemagne's men felled the Irminsul, the pillar at the center of Saxon religion. In October 782, he had 4,500 Saxon prisoners executed at Verdun, and then he wrote it down. The Capitulatio de Partibus Saxoniae made it a capital offense to refuse baptism, to eat meat in Lent in contempt of the faith, to leave an offering at a spring or a tree. That's not a war on a people. That's a law against being one. In a Saxon house, it looked like this: a child baptized in the morning and called something older after dark. It didn't stay simple either. Widukind, who led the resistance, accepted baptism in 785 with Charlemagne standing as his godfather, and by 802, Saxon troops were fighting in Frankish armies. Survival and surrender wore the same coat. 1,000 years on, their descendants shipped out of Bremerhaven for Missouri and Wisconsin, still calling themselves Saxons. Nobody had told them to stop. Before Charlemagne, before any of that, one coast had already beaten Rome outright. The war started over cowhides. The tax was ox hides. That's genuinely what it was about. Number 7, Fries, Fries, Friesen. It means Frisian, and Rome met them early. Drusus put the Frisi under tribute in 12 BC, and the arrangement held for 40 years, until a collector named Olennius decided the hides being handed over were too small. Their cattle were small. He took their land, then their wives and children, and in the year 28, the Frisians hanged his taxmen and destroyed a Roman relief force in the grove of Baduhenna. Rome let it go. The coast wasn't worth it. Their names were fixed much later, and not by choice. An 1811 decree in Ostfriesland killed off the old patronymic system. You can watch it happen in the parish books. A son's surname suddenly matches his father's, and then it never changes again, and the language is still alive. Around 470,000 people speak West Frisian. It's official in the province of Friesland, and it's the closest living relative English has anywhere on Earth. The families who left for Illinois, Iowa, and southern Ontario took pieces of it with them. The next name is the most German-sounding thing on this list. It may not be German at all. Everyone hears Bayer and pictures the same thing. Munich, mountains, a beer hall. Now trace the word. Number 6, Bayer, Bayer, Bayer. It comes from the Bayuvarii, and the strongest reading of that name is men from Boioheimum, the home of the Boii, who were Celts. Bavaria may be named after a Celtic country its founders had already left, and Rome never recorded them. That's the honest part. The Bayuvarii turn up for the first time around the year 520, in a Frankish list of peoples, and again in 551, when Jordanese places them east of the Swabians. They surface in the wreckage of the Roman provinces of Raetia and Noricum, after the empire that would have written them down had already collapsed. They became a duchy inside the Frankish world, and kept their own law, their own dukes, and a dialect nobody outside could follow. They did precisely the same thing in America. Catholic Bavarians filled the German Triangle, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, St. Louis, and built societies to hold a way of speaking their grandchildren were never going to inherit. By the 3rd generation, the name was pronounced Bayer and the dialect was gone. If this is landing for you, take 5 seconds. Hit like, hit subscribe. There are 5 names left and the cost goes up from here. Number 1 is the one that isn't German at all, and it's the entry you'll still be thinking about tonight. Let's keep going. Here's where this stops being a proud list. Number 5, Preuss. Preuss. The name means Prussian, and Prussian is the byword for German order, German discipline, German steel. Except the first Prussians weren't German, they were Balts, the Prussi, closer kin to Lithuanians than to anyone in Berlin. They may be the people Tacitus called the Esti in the year 98, though that link is argued over, and probably always will be. In 1230, the Teutonic Order arrived with a papal blessing to convert them. The conquest took until 1283. The Great Rising of 1260 to 1274 failed. The leadership was killed or enslaved, and German settlers moved into the gaps. The language held on in the villages for another 4 centuries, and then simply stopped. The last speakers recorded in Warmia around 1700. What survives of it is 3 printed catechisms. That is the entire library of a people. So the kingdom, the empire, the whole byword for discipline, all of it carrying the name of the people it erased. Their descendants left for Wisconsin, Michigan, and Saskatchewan. And if your name is Preuss, you might be from either side of that. The name doesn't tell you which, and it never will. One name on this list Rome really did write down. You can still hear how they said it. Say your own surname out loud, and you're doing an impression of a Roman. Number 4, Kaiser. From Caesar, and it's the oldest Latin word in any Germanic language. The Germanic peoples borrowed it while the family name was still hardening into a title, and they took it early enough to keep the diphthong. Latin itself flattened that AI into a plain E by the 4th century. German never did. Kaiser, not Kaiser. The pronunciation froze on the day it crossed the Rhine, and it's been sitting in the name ever since. For 19 centuries, it was the highest title in Europe. For about 18 months, it was a liability. In 1917 and 1918, that word was the enemy's face on every American recruiting poster. Iowa's governor issued the Babel Proclamation on the 23rd of May, 1918, banning public speech in any language but English, and 5 women in Scott County were fined for talking German on a party line. Shop signs got painted over. Kaiser became Kaiser, Kaiser, Kaiser. And here's the thing people get wrong. Almost every one of those changes was made by the family itself, at a courthouse, deliberately, by someone protecting a child. The next name was handed an ancestor it never had, by a man with a printing press, 1,500 years too late. Number 3, Hermann. Everyone knows the story. Hermann the German, the chieftain who wiped out 3 legions in the Teutoburg forest. It's a good story. The name has nothing to do with him. Hermann is Old High German, hairy and man, army man. The chieftain's name in every ancient source is Arminius, of the Cherusci. The two were welded together in the 16th century, most likely by Martin Luther and the chronicler Johannes Termeyer, who wanted a German hero and gave him a German name to hold. The real man is harder to celebrate. Rome raised him, made him a citizen, trained him to command, and he used all of it on Varus in the year 9. His own brother Flavus stayed with the legions. His father-in-law Segestes tried to warn Rome about him. His own relatives killed him around the year 21, and the diaspora fell in love with the invented version. Germans in Missouri named a town Hermann in 1837. In 1897, the sons of Hermann finished a copper statue on a hill above New Ulm, Minnesota, shipped in crates, paid for in lodge dues by immigrants honoring an ancestor who was never theirs. After 1945, Germany quietly removed him from the school books. Minnesota kept him standing. The next name never stayed anywhere long enough to build a monument. Number 2, Schwab. Schwabe, swope. It means Swabian, and the Swabi are in the record early. Caesar fought their king Ariovistus in 58 BC and described him as the most dangerous man on the far bank of the Rhine. The root may simply mean our own people. It's the plainest thing a tribe can call itself. The duchy was broken up in 1313, and the Swabians started moving. In the 18th century, they went east as colonists, down the Danube into the Banat and out to Bessarabia and the Black Sea, invited by rulers who wanted farmers and offered charters to get them. Guaranteed privileges, in writing, permanent. In 1872, Russia revoked them. Permanent had lasted a century. Families read the decree at their own kitchen tables and started packing, and they went to Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and Colorado, hard wheat country, which is what they knew. The ones still in the Danube lands were expelled outright between 1944 and 1948. The same name as a settler in one century and a refugee in the next. That's uncomfortable, and it's true of far more families than want to hear it. Number 1 was never a German name at all. That is exactly why they had to fight to keep it. Number 1, Wend. Wend, Wendland. It's the German word for a Slav, and specifically for the Sorbs of Lusatia, a West Slavic people who have lived inside Germany for more than 1,000 years and never stopped being something else. The suppression is documented, and it is exact. In 1975, Prussia banned Sorbian from the schools of Upper Lusatia. In 1885, pastors were instructed to confirm children in German only. Surnames were Germanized on paper. One letter at a time, Novak became Noack. In 1937, the Nazis banned the Domowina, stopped Wendish church services, and destroyed the Wendish house and the Macica Serbska library in Bautzen. and plenty of Wends assimilated willingly, because German was the language of getting anywhere at all. That was a reasonable thing to want. Some of them wouldn't. On the 30th of November, 1853, 558 Wends boarded the Ben Nevis at Bremen behind their pastor, Johann Kilian. They landed at Galveston, walked inland into Lee County, Texas, and built a town they named Serban. In the church they raised there, the sermon was preached in Wendish. They didn't cross an ocean to become Americans. They crossed it so they could go on being Wends. There's a moment that happens at a lot of kitchen tables now. Somebody finds the manifest, the scanned page, the ship, the date, and there's the surname, spelled the long way, the old way. And the conclusion arrives instantly. This is where it got changed. Somebody at Ellis Island couldn't spell it. They didn't. Those manifests were written in Bremen and Hamburg before the ship ever sailed, by clerks who spoke German and got it right. Nothing was taken from anyone at the border, which means the change came later, at a courthouse, on a naturalization form, in somebody's own handwriting, on a specific afternoon, by a person who sat down and decided how much of the old word their children were going to have to carry. If your surname is on this list, that's what you actually inherited. Not a tribe, not a bloodline, a decision. The Chatti are gone. Rome is gone. Prussia is gone. The word is still in your mouth because someone chose to keep saying it and then handed it to you. So drop your surname in the comments below. I want to know which one you carry and which of these 10 landed closest to your own family. Some of you are going to recognize a spelling that got changed 3 generations back, and those are the ones I most want to read. If this opens something up, subscribe. There's more of this coming.